seeing a African-American community flourish back in Brooklyn, that was not a reflection in growing up in the 70s and the 80s. Like I was born in 75, but I primarily grew up in the 80s in New York. And during that time, there was no Boys and Girls Club in America, in my neighborhood, or YMCA, so the streets was the playground. And there were no successful Black-owned businesses then, And so to hear this story, it sounded far-fetched. And then when I researched it and I seen after the fourth, normally when you Google, you don't go past the first page. It's like you kind of stuck there. But this was 2007, so I went to page 4. I was determined to find some truth to what they were talking about. And I seen this cachet that had Dr. Charles Ogletree name next to it, and he was seeking reparations for the survivors.
You're listening to America's Healthiest City on Mike King Biz Radio Network on ESPN Richmond 106.1 and Choice 105.3. Welcome to America's Healthiest City on ESPN Richmond 106.1, part of the Mike King Biz Media Network. If you're new to this program, please hop over to americashealthiestcity.com to learn about our 10-year community partnership to make Richmond, the entire region, the healthiest in America by 2033. We are a year down. We've got 9 to go. We need everybody involved. And so if you represent a nonprofit, a business, a for-profit, an academic institution, or any other institution that's interested in seeing this community move in this direction, please see what it takes to become an ambassador. And overall, just take a look at the ideas board and leave your comments behind. Today in the studio, I have Queon Martin, the CEO and founder of Carter Magazine. We got a wide-ranging conversation today on creativity and culture. And I'm just so excited to have Q here in the studio. So thank you for joining me.
Awesome, man. I came for the free water, man. The Richmond water. Like, I need it. Man.
Right off the bat. Yeah, we're going to get into it today. So one thing that we love to hear, and our listeners love to hear, is your origin story. And I don't need you to give me the whole background, but your relationship to Richmond. Are you native to Richmond, or did you move here? And if so, when did that happen?
No, I'm from Brooklyn, New York. I came to Richmond back in 2019 to work alongside BK Fulton and Jackie, and to do Solidify to help them, with that financial company. And when 2020 came about, the pandemic, I chose to stay in Richmond and not New York because it was real bad. And then after that, it was just like 2021, I was introduced to Common House, and because I was a member at Soho House, and I seen the similarities in it. And so I became a member, and I got to meet you, Mike King, and a few other folks. And, went to the Richmond Forum, got to meet Kim Greenwich, the vice president of Great Television and GM of 12 on Your Side. And so I seen some opportunities to maybe bring my company here and do some things, and that found me in a situation that I continued to stay. Yeah.
So let's continue on in your background a little bit. I want to learn about kind of what led you to starting Carter Magazine before we get into that too deeply. I know that you have a whole history and career in media business. You were with MoviePass before, and you've done some other things in media, including being in a feature film one time in the past.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that.
You did your homework on that. Yeah. So I got started. A friend of mine, he was in the arts, and I was like 17 years old, and he was modeling like the Source magazine. He would be in a lot of music videos because New York at the time, big on media when it came to the culture of hip hop, and so he always wanted the crew to go with him on auditions. And one day he caught me by myself, and I went with him to audition. And while there, the casting director asked me if I was there for the audition. I said no, but if I have to leave, I leave. It's like, no, just think about it. So a young lady that I seen who was a familiar face to me played Tupac's girlfriend in Above the Rim. And she was there for the audition too, but she needed a male counterpart to go in for the audition. Instead of her waiting, she asked me, could I go in next with her? Because she would have to wait for the next person to come out. And I was like, I don't want to read no lines. And she was just like, you don't have to read anything. We got to act like we're in a relationship. and you don't know what it feels at, for a female at that time of the month. And I'm like, I like 6, 7 sisters. Like, I know that feeling. Like, I deal with it all the time. And so I was like, okay, and I don't have to read nothing. She was like, no. So we went in and did it. And she wound up living in Brooklyn too. So we all took the train back. And 2 weeks later, the casting director, Keith, left a message with my mother and said, we like your audition. We'd like you to come back. And so my friend who I supported didn't get the call back. So I felt at that moment, why should I go? Because I didn't go there for this. It's him. This is his career and what he's pursuing. But he was very supportive. He was like, no, 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 go. I'm telling you, you should do this. And so I went. Long story short, I get the part. It's for a new artist. Her name is Monica, and her first video, Don't Take It Personal. And so for me being in that music video, I was exposed to everything behind the scenes that I've never seen before. Because as a kid, I'm the run of 13. So no one wanted to watch me. So the television was my best friend. And so watching TV, and now I'm on a set, I'm looking at how things are developed behind the scene that's going to project on the screen. That's when my interest got into play. And so I just nagged everybody on the set about, like, how you do this and this. Asked the director if I'm not in the scene, could I still stay around to see how you do it? He was like, yeah, just be quiet. I said, I will. And then the cast director, he took a liking to me, so he became my agent. And that's how I got the part for Substitute 2, Film Mix and Nia. I wanted to learn how to direct, but I didn't want to act. And so he signed me up for this program. And if you're selected, you get to work under 2 directors. And I was 1 in 10 that got selected. And I understudied under Martin Scorsese and Joe Schumacher for 2 films. One was Bringing Out the Dead. That's with Martin Scorsese, and Flawless with Joe Schumacher. So that allowed me to learn pre-production, production, and post-production. And from there, I met a friend of mine's intern with Stacy Spikes, who's the creator of Movie Pass, but started off at Urban World Film Festival, which he created in the 90s. So after learning how to make films, I wanted to know acquisitions and distributions of films. And so I volunteered the first year, and I asked him a lot of questions, and he liked my energy, so he asked me to come back, and I'll be on pay salary this time. And I was like, okay, And so I went from there, line producer to executive producer. And then when he went to do Movie Pass is when I had the idea to start Carter Magazine. Yeah.
Well, I would say that there might have been just a little bit of luck in there.
A lot of luck.
At the same time, it sounds like
right place at the right time. Yeah.
Well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to talk about Carter Magazine.
Awesome.
Thank you for listening to America's Healthiest City on Mike King Biz Radio Network.
You're listening to America's Healthiest City on ESPN Richmond 106.1. In the studio today, we have Queon Martin, the CEO and founder of Carter Magazine and DNA America. And we're talking about culture in Richmond and the vibes that we've got. But I want to talk about media. Media is a place to influence society. It's a place that reflects society, and you're in this business, Q. So tell me a little bit about how Carter Magazine started, and for our listeners' sake, tell us a little bit about what Carter Magazine is.
Yeah, so from 17 years old to like early 30s, I was learning creating entertainment. And shout out to my good friend, childhood friend, Daytwan Thomas. He's now the executive vice president of Dick Clark Productions. Daytwan would come with me to auditions, and he got the bug, so he started working at Vibe magazine in the 90s, and then went over to Harris Publishing, which Harris at the time had XXL, King, Rods, and so on and so forth. And so after I went understudying under Martin Scorsese and Joe Schumacher, and I came back, Day told me and introduced me to what him and his friend created, which was King Magazine. And I was like, wow. And so spending time with him, learning that, and then when Russell reached out to him, I went with Russell Simmons for Global Grind. And so I started seeing the power of media and like the influence of it, but in a way I wanted to do where it had impact. So it was April 15, 2007 is when it started. And I was waiting for a basketball game, and I got the bug because I watched a show called Like It Is with Gil Noble back in New York. For the first time, I used to ignore the show because to me it was kind of boring. It was dry. But I watched it, and I learned about Black Wall Street. And I thought it wasn't real at the time because seeing a African American community flourish back in Brooklyn, that was not a reflection in growing up in the 70s and 80s. Like I was born in 75, but I primarily grew up in the 80s in New York. And during that time, there was no Boys and Girls Club in America, in my neighborhood, or YMCA, so the streets was the playground. And there were no successful Black-owned businesses then, you know. And so to hear this story, it sounded far-fetched. And then when I researched it and I seen after the fourth week, normally when you Google, you don't go past the first page. It's like you kind of stuck there. But this was 2007, so I went to page 4. I was determined to find some truth to what they was talking about. And I seen this cachet that had Dr. Charles Ogletree name next to it, and he was seeking reparations for the survivors. And then I reached out to him. Back then, you could find somebody's email on Google easy. Now it's kind of hard. And so I emailed him, wound up learning he was a Harvard professor at teaching law, and actually President Obama was one of his students. And so, and Obama wasn't president at the time. He was a senator of Chicago. And I asked him, I'm like, I would like to do a documentary on this and gear this towards the culture of hip hop. And he gave me all his resources to his whole legal team and things like that. And they educated me about the story, the backstory, the legal story. And so I did a documentary. It's free on YouTube. It's called Bridging the Gap Between History and Hip Hop Black Wall Street. That was the first step I took towards media. But budget wise, I knew I didn't want to wait to constantly produce a documentary. I wanted something to constantly be in your face. And in 2010, I watched a documentary on JFK Jr. And he spoke about his publication, George. And I remember George. I was a fan of George. Like the first cover had Cindy Crawford on the cover just as George Washington. I thought that was illmatic. Like, I was like, wow, that's dope. And so I was like, I want to create something like that, but geared towards the culture. And so I thought about calling it Martin after Martin Luther King. Civil rights movement, but it stood there, and I needed something more with a broad reach. And then I remember doing something, wanted to call it Malcolm after Malcolm X, same thing. And I remember when I wrote an article on Dr. Carter G. Woodson, founder of Black History Month. And I was like, wow, the name Carter, like not only is he the founder of Black History Month, but also at the time, you know, you had Jay-Z in his prime, Sean Carter. And then Lil Wayne was coming up at that time too, Dwayne Carter. So this name bridged the gap between history and hip hop, and it transcends time. Betty Carter, Apprentice Bunchy Carter, you know, President Carter, Joe Carter. So I was like, so I did a double cover. I had Carter G. Woodson on one side and Jay-Z on the other, and I sent it to Daytwan, and I didn't tell him I did it. And I was like, yo, look at this magazine that's coming out. What you think about it? And he looked at the covers. He was like, yo, this is wow. Like, but who's the guy on the other cover? And I said, that's Dr. Carter G. Woodson, founder of Black History Month. He was like, this is crazy. He was like, contact him. I said, no need. He was like, why? I said, because we're going to do it. He was like, get the hell out of here. I said, but we're not going to write it. We're going to allow youth to write it. But we're going to give them our talents. Everything that we know creatively that we've learned, whether it's publishing, filmmaking, editing, directing, marketing, we're going to give them all that energy. And we launched February 1st, 2011. And the first organization we worked with was Jamie Hector, who plays Marlo on The Wire. He has a nonprofit organization called Moving Mountains. And his students was the first writers for Carter Magazine. And that year went off. And it was the same year Stacey started MoviePass. So come September, you know, Carter is bubbling and MoviePass is at the beginning. And I was in LA. And Stacey came out to LA to meet with me, to recruit me to come to MoviePass because he wanted me to bring that same flavor to MoviePass. So that's how I got to MoviePass.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so Carter Magazine, it was a print magazine.
Digital, actually, no print.
Digital,
all
print.
Digital. I didn't have the budget to go print. Okay. Yeah, so all digital. And it's the first social business to land on social media as far as Black history. So we're talking like early Facebook, you know, and there was no platform that was dedicated to Black history. So it became the vessel and the inspiration for others to promote Black history. And then when I took the position at MoviePass, MoviePass needed more of my time. So Carter had to be part-time now. And I had to figure out what can I show to limit time spent on Carter, because I had to give that energy to MoviePass. Mm-hmm. And I started looking at the numbers, and I noticed people were attracted to the Today in History. And so I said, well, what if I just focus on the today in history outside of creating all these categories and columns and stuff like that? And it worked. It didn't pick. It dropped. The numbers did drop because people were accustomed to what I introduced the first year, and there was no more digital publications, things like that. Videos weren't being made, but I kept it consistent, but just doing today in history. And I took the opportunity of what I was learning at MoviePass because I knew one day when I leave, I'm going to put that energy back into Carter, and that happened in 2017. And once I gave that energy back to Carter, it was off and running. Like I got back into the swing of things, knew how to market the way I wanted to do with impressions, acquisitions, and conversions, so much that in 2021 going into 2022, when Byron Allen was threatening the industry, the ad agencies about not supporting Black media, not allowing them to have insertion orders to run ads through their network, I was one of the media outlets that was partnered with him that he needed because the only thing at that time he had was the Weather Channel. So who's watching that? Like
Every 8 minutes.
Yeah, so he needed like my outlets and a few others. And that's when I seen the power of Carter. Like when I started, running the ads on there, I started seeing the numbers generated for these ads. And like, I didn't know at the time what a CPM was, which is cost per milli, and I was just like, they was like, what's your CPM? I was like, I don't know, what's that? Like, and they educated me. And so I wound up I said, well, that's $10. They were like, yeah, they jumped at that. They was like, yeah. And then when I was reaching the goal on the runtime on ads from Procter and Gamble, Amazon, Nissan, where I was reaching over 5 million, 6, 7, on a 31 to 1 month to 2 month runs, they were generous. They were like, we're robbing you. Like we're gonna bump this up to at least 30 CPM. And I was like, okay. Then I started studying the underlying and understanding what CPM meant and the worth of the value of what you can produce and generate just not off of just impressions, but conversions. Like McDonald's wanted subscribers to a YouTube channel when they did the whole HBCU run campaign. And so that means they want people to subscribe, which is more conversion. So that was an ROI on their investment in marketing. We're like, okay, we're going to market this, but now we want to make money off of it. So they're like, okay, direct people to the link. The link is going to direct them to the YouTube. We want subscribers, not viewers. And I was able to get them to between 60 and 70,000 subscribers on my own, which overall they reached over 180 when it came between. So I was the majority one that gave it. And it's because of my audience. Yeah. My audience primarily are like the middle millennial to Gen Z. And they hella woke, and so the ad spoke to them when it's like, what have you done for me lately? They didn't want to see product. They wanted to see missions. They wanted to see people that reflect them in positions, opportunities, investment in entrepreneurship, things like that. And after under unfortunate killings of Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and the countless others that we don't have names for, the industry was really looking to, the brands were really looking to partner and really send a message with that. And so my platform was the ideal place for it. So that's how that came about. Yeah.
You're listening to America's Healthiest City on Mike King Biz Radio Network on ESPN Richmond 106.1 and Choice 105.3.
Welcome back to the show. I am Will Melton, your host, and today in the studio we have Queon Martin from DNA America and Carter Magazine. We're talking about culture nationwide and right here in Richmond. Before the break, we were talking about Carter Magazine specifically, but I want to talk about the introduction of DNA America and your partnership with NBC 12 and how you're bringing these stories to the local market.
Yeah. Like I said previously, the unfortunate killings of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and Breonna Taylor, I wanted to speak to those, like the concerns and how people felt, but I couldn't. Carter wasn't a platform for it, and so prior to creating Carter, I originally wanted to create a news channel, like 12, but I don't have the budget, so I got to get creative with this. And so by the time June of 2020, I test out something on Carter that I never did before. Was a topic of, at the time, Trump was trying to promote a drug that he said was working for COVID, and this drug that he was personally invested in while being president. And I wanted to get response from the audience, and I put Trump on Carter, and I just, and it went crazy. Like, this was the first time I ever seen people engage in the comments. Like, normally I was getting likes and shares, but now I was seeing comments like back and forth and people debating, and I'm like, whoa. I said, okay, I can't continue. I don't want it. I don't want that energy here. Mm-hmm. And so, ironically, at the time, I was listening to Damn, like Kendrick Lamar album. And my favorite song on there is DNA. And so, it was always drilling in my head. I got royalties and loyalties inside my DNA. I was like, wow, that's the fabric of, similar backgrounds. But I look at it as America, America's DNA. And then I was like, I need it's an acronym, but what's the name? And I was like, well, if it would be distributing news authentically. And then the tagline is what we know, not what you want us to believe. And that was the launch of DNA America. So now I have in 2020 a news outlet that I could speak to the concerns of the communities in a way to bring balance. So like with local television, for us, we would constantly see whether it's a mugshot, killings. There was no balance when it came to local television and the coverage of the African American community. It was just this one perception, like, creating this boogeyman, right? And so I wanted to do something. So me and Kim, I met Kim Greenwich at the Richmond Forum, and we sat at the same dinner table.
My mentor.
Yeah, he's a great human being. And we kicked it, learned that we both from Brooklyn, and we would go have these lunch meetups every month. And then it was actually June of 2023 when I approached him about it. I said, I think we can work together, and I think I can be a great asset as a partnership with Great Television in 12 while bringing more awareness to the African American community, being that voice and things like that. And at the time, Kim heard it, but he couldn't see it. And then he had this conference, and then he had this symposium at Virginia State University, and he had like media influencers like Charlamagne the God and Kathy Hughes' son from News One. They were speaking about, how to connect more with the African American community. And the big answer was you got to get to social media. And when that came about, the first person he thought was me that talked about it over a year ago. And he said, Q, are you in town? I said, yeah. He said, can we have lunch? I said, yeah, cool. And, he said, I finally think I know what you was trying to tell me. I said, okay, cool. And he said, can you put a presentation and present this to the head of broadcasting and the head of digital? I said, sure. And I did. And Frank, who's the head of programming at 12 on your side, he was just like, normally I could poke holes in things, but there's nothing I can poke in this. And Kim was like, okay, this is good. He was like, okay, Q, can you come next week and do it to the front of the operations marketing? And I did. And they all loved it. He was like, okay, we're going to partner up. And that's how it happened. So now that the platform is there, stuff that is on Carter and DNA, I have my own URL link on 12. So it's 12onyourside.com/Carter Magazine /DNA America. And so the things you see are stuff from Carter DNA, but then there's the special section for Richmond local news that is not titled Richmond local news, it's titled Key Awareness. And that's to pay respect to a gentleman who actually created Key Awareness and really focus on, the area Robert Wright Evans, who passed away recently. And his goal was to give coverage to like the courts, Gilpin, Creighton, Mosby, Fairfield, Hillside, Blackwell, the sections, Jackson Ward, Churchill, East End, South Side, and I wanted to pay homage by giving him that, a pass, but I'm pretty sure he should be in this position, right? He should be the one to give the voice to Richmond. So instead of calling it Richmond local news, let's call it key awareness. And on the site, it tells you why to pay homage to Robert Wright Evans Sr., who created this publication from his own money. And he's a native Richmond from Gilpin Court. And he wanted to give a voice to all the courts and the communities. And so it's a special place for me. It's like with Richmond, I mean, I bring the experience of what I've learned through the years. And Brooklyn is always me. So wherever I go, is Brooklyn is there, However, I'm here to be a student to Richmond, be a great listener to Richmond, and also be a outlet and an advocate for the unheard voices out there that need a platform to be seen and heard.
Well, I can tell you, I personally have enjoyed getting to know you and connecting. I've loved hearing the stories about your past, and I can see the impact that you're making here in the community. With a couple of minutes that we've got left, or maybe just a minute we've got left, I want to give you a chance to let folks know where they can find DNA America and Carter Magazine. And if you would graciously recommend somebody out there who maybe is making a difference, who we can bring into the studio and have them tell their story as well.
But a person that comes to mind is an amazing woman at the Black History Museum, Sajida. And she's a person who I believe she allows the Black History Museum of Virginia to go beyond the walls of the museum and into the community. And she has a certain gift and a reach. And I think she's a person definitely should have an opportunity on this show and get to learn her.
Well, I'm grateful for that recommendation. I'm grateful for your time here in the studio.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
I feel like we can spend another hour together.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Until next time, this is America's Healthiest City. Please follow us at America's Healthiest City on Instagram, subscribe on YouTube, and catch us each week at 6 a.m. on ESPN Richmond 106.1 and ESPNRichmond.com. Will Melton, I'm out. We'll see you next week.